Hello, everyone. I hope you can see me and you can hear me well. My name is Ksenia Farkas. Welcome to our webinar, where we are going to talk about how AI can enhance the member experiences within membership-based organizations. As you know, in the new era marked by technological jump, the merge of the artificial intelligence and engagement strategies has opened new doors of possibility. And today we gather to discuss the potential of AI in changing member interactions, reimagining the way how we connect, serve, and empower our communities. Throughout the next hour, we will be exploring how AI's predictive capabilities can deeply impact member experiences. And I would like to introduce our moderator, Matt Raven, who will introduce our esteemed speakers.
Thanks, Senia. I'm going to jump straight into our speakers first, because they're the most important. George Fisher, one of our attendees today, the speakers today. We've got George and Josh joining us today. George Fisher has a long and outstanding record of various activities inside Paris CCI, where he was in charge successively with advisory services to industrial SMEs, multi-channel edition of business information, marketing, international developments, new products, coordination of information technology and e-commerce development, and experimental actions, and finally, director for international networks and partnerships. This last position includes networks management, cooperation, and international partnerships, capacity building for foreign institutions, experimental actions, as well as dematerialization of export formalities. In 1998, he initiated the World Chambers Network, which remains until today the only official initiative interconnecting worldwide chambers of commerce on the web, providing a unique network among these organizations all over the world. In 2016, he founded his own company, Fisher Corporate Consulting International, specializing in capacity building and training for business-oriented structures, government agencies, CCIs, employer and sector associations, company clusters, and so forth. Strategy, advocacy, communication, marketing, and sales, services to members, and he's also an expert in this domains for the International Trade Center in Geneva, the common agency of UN and WTO. Josh is our second speaker. Josh Klingman is it Kligman?
Yeah, you got it right, Matt. Kligman.
Josh Kligman is the co-founder and CEO of Yearly, and he's been working with nonprofits on annual reports, brand, and partnerships since 2011. Josh is helping 2,000 nonprofits create more engaging annual reports with Yearly. Throughout his career, he's helped launch and run nonprofit media partnerships nationally and locally with television, radio, and web to amplify the reach of campaigns and provide demonstrated value for nonprofit stakeholders. Partner work includes the Association of Association Executives, RFD TV, Comcast, NBC, CBS Radio Boston, Lamar, Outdoor Advertising Association of America, and more. Prior to this, Josh advised Fortune 500 advertisers at AOL, like Wendy's and Home Depot, providing unique opportunities for monetizing online real estate. Josh also worked on accounts at ad agencies and sold radio. Josh received his BA from American University in Communications and his MBA from American University in Marketing Management and Entrepreneurship. Rafa is our third panelist today. Rafa, I'm going to ask you to just introduce yourself quickly.
Sure thing. Thank you very much, Matt. It would be very hard to now introduce myself after the introduction of George and Josh, just because they have such an amazing background. But as Matt mentioned, I'm the marketing director here at GlueUp, and really, what my background just comes in growth, in creating operations and processes for different organizations, mainly startups. But now the beauty of working here at GlueUp is that we get to bridge the gap between technology and communities. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all, and I'm very excited. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Rafa. And lastly, I am the sales director for Southern Africa, also at GlueUp, based down here in South Africa. So today's discussion is one I've been looking forward to for quite a while. Everybody talks about AI, but nobody really understands it. It's a hot topic currently, and in its current form, because AI has actually been around for ages, but this is a new format of AI. And in its current form, it's being implemented everywhere at a very fast pace. Sometimes it's implemented just for the sake of keeping up with the competition. And the concern is that people aren't necessarily doing the due diligence that they would with other product enhancements. They might just be rushing to get AI functionality without really understanding how it's going to benefit their users, what potential risks might be involved, what scope there is for the use of AI, because everyone kind of thinks of, this robot talking to them, but it's really got a lot more capacity to it than that. Everybody talks about the possibilities with AI, and they're almost limitless, but how do we apply them to membership-based organizations? And what negatives should we be considering when doing so? I'm going to start off with panel discussion, but for the rest of you attendees, please don't leave until the end. Make notes as you go along. And if you've got any questions, we're going to open the floor at the end so that we can then open the panel to answer those questions and engage a little bit more. Let's start with a really broad question. And I'm going to open it to anybody, so just shout if you want to jump in. How can AI be effectively used to enhance member engagement and experiences in organizations? I know personally, I jumped onto the Virgin Atlantic system the other day. I don't know if you've seen that, but they've got Gen AI, which is a virtual Jennifer Lopez that engages with you and talks to you. And it looks like her sitting there on the boat, chatting to you when you're doing your booking. What are some of the other use cases of AI-driven member engagement strategies that you can think of? What examples do you have? And where has it really been used well?
I don't know if I can top that example of JLo. That seems pretty cool. That makes me think that when customers come to my website, as a sales tool, maybe I need to have a warm, AI intro like that with a celebrity. But I really think that AI can be used to help improve communication and retention when organizations like associations are communicating with members. For instance, how organizations can use AI to update community members on different happenings and news, and save time while you're creating those communication processes. So, one example like that I see over and over is an impact report or an annual report. And how can you use AI to make that process of creating that report, which in this example is a communication tool for members, to make that process go much faster? There could be pitfalls, which is accuracy, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
I would like to say that to point out a little thing here. You call this webinar predicting. And I had a banker friend who was always saying predictions are made to be refuted by reality. So it's somehow I feel that we are just like the beginning of the internet. We can see a certain number of things that might happen, but we don't know exactly how people will indeed take over this tool and use that tool. Okay. More specifically, when it comes to member associations, mostly, I would say I haven't seen any of them really using it to improve their relationship with members. But I have seen a very recent McKinsey report saying that probably in business, the most wide use of the AI will probably be in marketing. So just as Josh put it, you can see how it is already used by members. In fact, customers and users of companies, and probably see how this will reflect in the same way with membership organizations, excluding small organizations, of course.
Absolutely. It's a good point. In marketing, I mean, if you go onto any of the major social medias or YouTube or any of those, they're immediately showing you what they think that you are interested in seeing, based on the information that they've managed to track from you throughout your usage of that system. And it's great to see that organizations are actually trying to use the same sort of capability. Instead of hosting their information on a third-party platform that gathers all the data, they're now actually bringing it in-house and trying to learn more about their members so that they can personalize that content for them.
But there is a danger here that we have seen also with the internet, is that a lot of these organizations are run by either by, I was going to say old people, not very open-minded, or by people who are mesmerized or intoxicated by geeks. So they go to using these tools without asking themselves what is the use of it. And I think that the main thing is to ask ourselves, and to those organizations to ask themselves, how can I use that in order to improve my business, and not just to be seen as somebody who is up to date and a fashion victim, or I don't know what, okay? So really the idea is how to use that to improve my business. And amazingly enough, and I think it's almost an oxymoron, but if organizations want to do something with AI, they would probably make most of their money and most of their influence in the beginning by running awareness seminars, training seminars, and advisory activities for their members on how to use AI.
Absolutely.
And just to sorry, Matt, just to echo a little bit of what George mentioned, because I think George touched a lot of very interesting potential pathways for conversation with this. But he did mention that marketing is indeed one of the business units that is engaging with AI the most, or at least AI as it has been popularized now in terms of it being a language development tool, right? Because I mean, there's AI in a lot of different places, even in the Google search bar. It's utilizing AI to give you suggestions based on what you're writing. But to George's point, I feel that when it does come down to member-based organizations, at the heart of community is engagement, and at the heart of engagement is content. Therefore, if we are kind of implementing some of those marketing strategies and developing content that is engaging, then obviously we will be able to drive that really true sense of relationship and engagement with our members. Having said that, however, I think the over-reliance on AI to be able to generate some of this content is also going to pose some potential problems, not just because of the validity of the information that you might be receiving from AI, but also because people need to realize that behind every AI query, there is a human there asking it for a particular answer. And therefore, that's two parts to that as well, because not only does it depend on the expertise giving the question to AI, meaning that the question has to be posed in a way that AI is able to understand it, because the output is equal to the input in terms of quality. But also it has to be the person reading that type of content needs to be able to read that, interpret that, and see if it would actually make sense for the psychographic and demographic information of their community.
I think that's a really good point, Ralph. And what people need to understand is that AI does have self-learning. And a lot of people are really scared about that. But as you say, it's input in, input out. So if it's learning from somebody who really doesn't understand the system and is asking the wrong questions, it's going to be teaching itself the wrong path. Essentially, it's not going to achieve what you're hoping it achieves. So you really need to train that AI yourself as humans properly from the word go, and let it understand. It's like authors are getting AI to write books for them, but they can't just ask it to write a book. They have to get that AI to actually learn their writing style by providing it with content and loads of information that they've already created. so that the AI understands what they actually want. Otherwise, you're just going to get generic content given from that AI.
You are totally right. There was some people here in France run an experiment asking the same question, but putting the question in 3 different ways. And the response was totally different. But to come back to one of these issues, I think that most of the drama around AI is mainly because people don't see that, in fact, there are 2 different circles where AI can be used. One is the very widely open one on the internet, with all the fake news, with all the drama, all the things that you can find on the social networks, etc., etc. And this one obviously raises a certain number of problems. But the other one is, which doesn't raise the same kind of difficulties, is when it is called what we used to call 20 years ago an expert system, when AI is used in a closed environment where the data is much less, which is much more secure and certain. Okay, for instance, when you look at legal data, okay, you go through the laws, regulations, the jurisprudence, but this is something where there can be sometimes a debate on certain points, but you are in an environment which is quite certain. Okay, it's the same thing with member-oriented organizations. If you run AI through their database of members, of the information they got from their members, the emails they get from their members, for the emails they receive from users or customers, okay, it doesn't have the same kind, it doesn't raise the same kind of problems, but it raises another problem. And here is where I understand why is Glue Up running this seminar, is that it's very strongly emphasized that you need the data about your members. So you need, obviously, a CRM and a very well-maintained, completed and maintained CRM.
Absolutely. The more information you have, the better.
Yeah, I think it's nice, Matt, and George, to think about the applications like you were just mentioning, like email and CRM for organizations and the community members, because like Raphael was just talking about before, you know, the data that you get from AI is really only as good as the information you're getting back. And the information you get back from the questions you would go on to, say, like ChatGPT today and ask is kind of open-ended. So really what it comes down to is the prompts, and those prompts are the really detailed questions that you're asking, which is why that experiment that George just mentioned gave 3 different answers, because there were kind of 3 different prompts that the people running that experiment probably gave. So of course you'll get different answers, but how do you know which one is the right path? I don't believe that the technology and the trial and error has to be up to the organizations. I think that's the responsibility of companies that are going to provide products and services to the organizations, so that they're really tailored to specific applications to, say, communicate with your members through a CRM or social media, or what Yearly does, you know, create impact reports, right? So you don't have to sit around and guess and say, like, all right, I've got AI. Now let me dedicate the next 2 business days to figuring out the right questions to ask it, or the prompts, so that I can get the right answers, and then we'll sit around and we'll figure out, you know, which one we're going to go with. The whole idea is to move with speed, and I think that stuff's just developing now. It's developing really quickly, but I think it's up to the technology companies that are providing you the services, and they'll find the needs and the applications to make it work. So I think over time, especially in the next 6 months or so, I think we're just going to see a lot of those applications come to be. I mean, my advice would be try them before you buy them, because, you know, some may work really well and be really applicable and spot on to what you looking for, and you know, and some may not. But I think it's going to be really, really helpful to move with speed. And a little later, I'll share some examples that I'm kind of seeing in my world. But that's my take on prompts.
And I think, as you say, it is a new. AI is not new, but the wave that we have currently is new, and
Right.
everybody's developing. I mean, I think
It's the
I read an
dimension which is
article-
new. Yeah.
Exactly. I read an article the other day. I think they're launching over 1,000, or it could be a lot more, but over 1,000 apps per month are being written for AI, and a lot of them are rubbish. A lot of them have a very specific application, but the rate of development is extreme. We were talking before how people have kind of denied and said, but AI is just a phase, and don't pay too much attention to it. I come from the photographic industry in my sort of past careers, and it was exactly the same when people moved from film to digital. And yes, if we look back at the first digital cameras, they were horrible. They were absolute rubbish. They were like one megapixel images. They're so pixelated, but people went with it, and it's developed to a point where you're not going to be able to tell the difference between a film developed image and a digitally developed image now. In fact, in a lot of cases, the digital images are way better, and the ease of use is definitely 100 times better. You can immediately get an image, you can share it, you can transmit that image. So, and that's really what AI is about. It's not about doing your job better, but about making it simpler and faster to do.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really interesting point with that, Matt, because if you think about the law of diffusion of innovation, right? You have a very small subsegment of very, very early adopters that feel very passionate and emotional and about the new technology, and then that kind of streamlined into the mass marketplace over time as more and more people adopt the technology, right? But the interesting part about AI, however, is that at least the way in which we're seeing it now is that pattern or that diffusion of this particular innovation is happening very, very quickly. And that is, again, because since the way in which the AI is designed, it is designed to learn a lot quicker. So that would make sense that the adoption would also be a lot quicker. But with the diffusion of innovation as well comes people on the other side of the aisle. They might not necessarily be as passionate, that are pointing out a lot of the different potential pitfalls and problems. And I think, George, you kind of touched on this point, which is now there is an overabundance of information, which it almost feels like to me where the divide between reality and fiction, or accurate information and disinformation, is becoming harder and harder to distinguish. And so as we're developing AI, I could make the assumption that there will eventually be AI to help moderate AI, just because there is so much information being put out there. And as much as I am one of I wouldn't consider myself like the earliest user, but just given my background, I have used it for a while now. But I can definitely still see that as much as, yes, the adoption of the technology is increasing very fast, and almost too fast, some people might say, having these types of discussions and being able to predict some of the potential problems that it may pose from a legal perspective, a social perspective, or even a philosophical perspective at one point is really important, right? Because we don't necessarily know what we don't know. But to your point, Matt, George, and Josh, it definitely is here to stay. It's just going to be, how do we navigate that adoption from here on in?
I think that if you compare, for instance, with what happened not so long ago with the metaverse, I wrote an article where I said all the bad things I thought about those $100 billion that Mark Zuckerberg said would invest in metaverse. Because I'm not a technology guy. I'm a marketing man. I don't know anything about technology. I always say, I don't know how this watch works. I don't care. What I want to know is it accurate and how to read the time, okay? So it's the same thing. I couldn't see what could be the use of the metaverse, the real use. when you look at the AI, you can see so many uses, so many possible uses that it is a little bit hard to define what would be the real catcher, the real business in the beginning. And I'm looking at it from a business point of view, not really from the philosophical point of view, of course. Those who think that AI has a conscience and it will replace human being totally, that's stupid. But anyway, that's not the issue for us. The issue is business. How is it a tool that you can use for business? Josh is really, he's right about this pragmatic approach in the beginning. He makes me think about the first Congress about e-learning in Vancouver. And one of the speakers said, e-learning is like sex for teenagers. A lot of them speak about it, but very few do it. And the very few who do it all hope that it will be better the second time. So I think that more or less, this is also what is happening with AI, okay? But what is interesting about it, that in business, it raises a certain number of really interesting questions and issues. I grew up in Geneva at the last Chamber of Commerce Congress. And we had a meeting, we had a seminar there, a roundtable about IA and Francophonic Africa. And so I used a certain number of prompts to try to find out what is the market of a specific product in a specific country in Africa. And ChatGPT very nicely answered that, sorry, because I have no data, I cannot tell you about that market, but you can go and ask to this organization or other organization, which was quite good. But you see, the problem here is that, which existed already somehow with the internet, but on the open internet, if you don't have any data about you, you don't exist. And so this is an issue for a certain number of countries, of chambers of commerce, of member organizations. It is also a very interesting issue about how to manage your own image. Because if you don't say enough, you don't exist. But if you say a little bit too much, AI, it was already possible before, but today with AI, you can very nicely find out what is the strategy of that company. And if you are a competitor and you look at your competition, you can very nicely ask AI to define the strategy of your competitors. Right? So another point for the membership-based organizations, how to train and run seminars to train companies about how to manage their own image.
Absolutely. And I think we keep getting back to the point of what are the potential challenges and the ethical considerations associated with using AI in member engagement, for instance. Where should we be cautious using AI?
I think about a conversation that we had internally at our company. My lead developer, whose name is Vince, came to us with this idea that we could help organizations tell their stories and create their content for communication, sometimes for fundraising purposes, and do it much faster using AI. So if you were writing a story to communicate to your members about a recap of an event that happened or a recap of a year, right? How do you write that story faster? And you can't tell the prompt, recap, event XYZ because they might not know anything about it. But what we're creating is a series of those specific prompts so that you could tell your story, and you will move faster, and that's going to help organizations create, various types of reports with yearly much quicker. The downside is the mindset, I think, of someone that's using it, thinking, okay, I've done the job, now I can walk away from it. I don't think that the technology is at a point where the story is going to be 100% done and crafted. You have to read it, you have to edit it, and make sure that it's really speaking in your voice. I mean, from a marketing perspective, you want to make sure it's on brand, but you want to make sure it's accurate too, and communicating what you intended the use to be. So I think it probably, with this type of technology I'm talking about, it's taking you, 75 or 90% there, but think of it as like a great head start, which I think has huge advantages. Stopping there and ignoring the fact that you have to kind of take a look at that work and edit it and tweak it a little bit to get it all the way done would be a pitfall. Another piece of technology that we're working with is creating images based on the text that you write. So if you were to have that in a report and the image is formed, same thing. You want to make sure it's, you're not just walking away from it too quickly. So AI moves fast, but we don't need to move that fast. Let's just review our work like we always have with any other technology. And then, then it'll help us with its intended purpose.
Quite a funny story on that. And going into social media posts, you often see, you can immediately see, oh, this was written by AI, because it's got that same sort of format. And people tend to just go and grab it, plunk it on, not go back and edit it or really put any attention to it. And they're just using it because they want to churn out content. But I've got a friend of mine who's actually an author, and he's been appointed by a company now in their advertising department to write posts for them as an author. And he goes and he creates these posts himself, but they've got an AI checker, which goes and checks to make sure that the person hasn't used AI. And ironically, in a lot of his posts, it comes up as 70% AI because AI is copying the format of people.
Absolutely.
Now, as soon as the people start writing in that same format, it's going to think, oh, well, AI could have created this. So it's a kind of back and forth. It's very difficult to become individual now because you are being copied the whole time. If you have a winning formula, it's going to be replicated. Yes, George.
I think that for member-based organizations, to come back to the hardcore of our discussion, we have to remember that AI is a tool for decision, not the decision-making tool, if you see what I mean. So when we look at a member-based organization, if they look very closely into what their members are, who they are, what do they do, what is their engagement with the organization, who came to attend a certain number of activities, because it is really funny to remember. I have some entrepreneur students, and I always ask them, how many companies have you met? And they all say 10, 12, 20. And I always tell them, I have more than 45 years of experience. I have never met a company. I met somebody in a certain department, in a certain company, which is totally different. And you have a lot of membership-based organizations where the member is a company, of course, but who decides to be a member? Who pays for the membership fee? Who uses the services? And very often, the boss of the company who decided to be member of that organization doesn't know at all what his company has done with that organization. So that's the basis of CRM. At the end of the day, or rather at the end of the year, you send your New Year wishes, but you also send a report saying, this is how many times your company has come to us, to see us, to meet us, to called upon our services, or even make a financial report on this is how much you have paid, and this is what would be the price you should have paid for it. And this, in my opinion, is one of the main things that they can get from AI, using the AI on their membership base. There is another thing which is important, is that when you look at their websites, very often what you see is, of course, the chairman, and so nobody really cares about what he is saying, but they put up testimonials. Okay, which is good. They put up testimonials of the people who came to a seminar, and there is a 1-minute interview with your cell phone, and they are happy and they learned a lot, and they went to the Glue Up webinar and it was good. Okay, but they forget that they can also valorize their members and to put up on their website the life of our members. And here AI can very easily help to find out what the members have done and make the link with that, and show, and that the member association shows that they are indeed keen to valorize their members.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, George, because also, I mean, most member organizations are going to have volunteers, right? And volunteers are very limited in their time that they can devote to the organization. And so having the access to this type of technology obviously helps them be able to volunteer at a much more effective rate. Now, you did mention ethical the dilemmas, Matt, and I'm not going to get into, you know, the AI becoming some type of sentient being or anything like that. But I think that, you know, it's important to remember that we are AI and AI is not us. What do I mean by that? Is that you should still have the same work ethic that you would have if you didn't have access to the tool. Meaning, if you're going to be asking it to develop content for you, you still have to take the time to review it, to make sure that it checks out, to make sure that it is going to resonate with your members, to make sure that it's going to actually be engaging and it's actually going to achieve the mission and vision that you have for your organization. So I don't necessarily think that it poses the ethical dilemmas that we think it poses. Rather, it's just going to expose more people that are actually lazy, as opposed to people that are not. And again, right, it's everything is, I feel that everything is just a reflection of who we are, and AI is no exception. So it's a great tool, especially for member-based organizations that do run on volunteers, that do need that extra help. But again, it's just extra help. It's not going to actually do the work of knowing your member, of building that emotional connection with them, because no AI is going to be able to actually build an emotional connection with your members. You're the only one that can do that. But AI is going to help you be able to essentially remove a lot of the heavy lifting that you have to do. For example, I know it's very time consuming to write like an event invitation, things like that. It can remove some of that heavy lifting, but you need to make sure that you put that time and allocate that time into what really matters, which is the member experience.
Raphael's right. This is, oh, sorry, Matt.
No problem. Go for it.
I was going to say there's this recently famous court case here in the U.S. where an attorney went into court, and there was this problem because they had cited something in their argument from another case, but the citation was incorrect, and it was from a case that didn't exist. And that's because they used AI to draft the brief, and AI cited this other case that didn't exist. And it wasn't checked by any humans, right? They assumed that it was right. And most of the time, maybe it is right. I don't know in the legal world, but it got famous for a reason, right? Because the judge looked into it, and you don't want the judge to be the one to look into it. So I think that goes along to, that point about, the human touch and checking the work and everything. So it's just interesting to see these kind of, these events pop up as the technology moves along.
Well, absolutely. Rafa, I wanted to ask you, from a marketing standpoint, what would be the key differences between traditional engagement versus AI-driven approach? Where would you kind of use AI to still use your traditional approach, or would you use it differently?
That's a really good question. I feel that when it comes down to marketing, right there, I'm a big proponent of making marketing and your branding about your customer, not necessarily about yourself. And I feel that a lot of companies and brands make that mistake of assuming that they are the most important company product in the world, as opposed to knowing that people within themselves, they're the most important person in the world, and then crafting the messaging accordingly. So I don't necessarily feel that AI is able to do that, because AI is not able to really understand the deep emotional connection and the deep emotional impact that you're trying to make in your audience by crafting a story that is about them. And you can only craft the story that is about them once you really understand who they are, what they care about, and then how do you provide the resolution to the problems that they're facing, right? For member-based organizations, there's obviously a clear emotional need to belong to a community of like-minded people. So then how can we tap into that with our marketing and our messaging and so on and so forth? So AI is not going to be able to do that. However, what AI is going to be able to do is remove a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of creating content, writing blogs, checking the content of your blogs. I mean, there's an AI tool that we're going to use, and I'm going to use personally right after this webinar, that's going to do the transcriptions of all of the questions that we discussed today. But that's still not going to replace the understanding of the people that I'm trying to talk to and the message that I'm trying to craft for them. Because even if you read the content of AI, it feels a little bit cold. It does lack some of that emotional resonance, right? That we need when we're reaching people, especially from a marketing perspective. I feel that emotions play a huge role, and so that is also something that, like I said, for me, it's more something that me and the team has been using to remove the heavy lifting. And with that, we've been able to allocate more time to strategizing, building deeper connections with our target audience, or in this case, it would be our members, and just really thinking about more innovative ways of using it, but not being consumed by it.
I agree with you, Rafael. It won't decide for you. You from all the information you gather here during this discussion, you will drive some decisions, for marketing decisions, strategy decisions, and this is what the human being will do, not the AI.
Absolutely. Now, we've been touching on the ethical and the those sort of challenges and the pitfalls of AI and where we need to be cautious. How does it work with in South Africa? It's the POPI Act and GDPR in Europe, and all the data regulations. Would you segment AI as an internal use only when you're dealing with sensitive data, or is that data now open to the web?
I mean, if you go into a program like ChatGPT, they tell you right away when you're logging in, don't put any sensitive data in there. So it's it's kind of like the concept of not putting anything in your marketing materials that you're not ready for the public to see or your members to see. So I mean, I think you just need to be mindful as you're just kind of crafting that. But it's probably not any different than any other type of piece of communication content that you're creating. I mean, you're not going to put anything in there that you're not looking for your audience to take a look at. I think that's as much as I know from a marketing standpoint on that side of it.
So from a marketing standpoint, I agree. I think the concern would be is if you're linking it to your CRM or something like that. Obviously, then it's going to need extra development to make sure that information is still private and it's not being exposed.
Yeah. So you'd have to rely on the service that you're using that's allowing you to use the AI. So if that's your CRM in that example, then I think it's probably good to take a look at the privacy policy of that CRM company as it relates to the AI, and it may not have a statement on that. So if you're unsure, I think it's okay to ask.
I'm not sure that's the real issue. As long as you stay inside your own CRM system, normally there is no problem. because this is an information which has been given to you by your member companies. We are talking about member-based companies. It's not the same thing, of course, for a company which is using, who has customers, okay? So this data comes from your members. Normally, you tell them what kind of information from that you will display on the on your website or in your member directory or things like that, okay? And what you are going to use only for your own use. Obviously, you won't put online if the member has paid or not paid, or is late in paying his fees. Okay. Now, the question comes when you try to enrich your data with internal data, with data that AI has collected on the open internet. Not a real problem just if you enrich it, but you have to be very careful not to use at any moment in your communication with outside or with your members a data which has not been given to you by your members, but collected on the internet. I think this is the ChatGPT will tell you, yes, of course we respect confidentiality and all that. And after all, they collect information which is openly and widely distributed on the internet. Okay? But the use of that data while using that data, you can run into trouble.
Absolutely.
And I think it is important for member-based organizations to collect that data, mainly about their main members, to know what they are doing, to be, or for new members. When you are going to meet a new company and try to attract it into your association, it's interesting to know from the start what they are doing, what are their issues, what are their challenges, in order to better respond when they will tell you about their problems.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely.
Look,
and to that point also, I mean, keeping your data secure right now is probably the equivalent of keeping your money in a bank account, because you know, especially in the era that we are now, information in the internet is just worth so much money. So people are willing to do anything to get it. I mean, like, you know, here in the US, we're having, you know, discussions in the Supreme Court over TikTok just because of the way that they're utilizing and selling some of that information, or at least presumed to, right? And if you actually look at the information that they are pulling, not only are they pulling your IP address, they know what type of phone device you use, what model you use, what is your web activity. They know all of that information. So to George's point, yes, keeping the information is crucial, but it is just as crucial, if not more, to be able to have either a system or a way of being able to keep that data very, very secure. Because once it's out on the internet, it's out there, and you're never going to get it back.
Speaking of how much information they really understand, I read something the other day that if you book an Uber, for instance, and two people are standing next to each other booking the exact same Uber, but the one person's battery is about to die, they're going to be billed more because the urgency is higher for that person versus the person whose battery is still fine. So it's amazing the amount of information that they know about you, just from even with these check things. I don't know if you know, but those robot systems that ask you to check that this is the images,
that you are not a robot, huh?
check boxes. It isn't checking if you've checked the checkbox. It's checking what you did before you checked the checkbox. So did the mouse move in a straight line straight to that checkbox and then click it? Because if it did, then you're probably a robot. Or did you kind of wiggle around before you got there? And based on that, it's actually authenticating that you're not a robot. So it's amazing how much information they're actually gathering without you really realizing they're gathering this information. But we've gone quite far into the session, and I want to give time for some of the attendees to ask questions as well. Let's ask one more question. What are the future trends and advancements expected in AI-driven member engagement strategies, or just in AI in general? What interesting tools have you seen out there, and where do you think it's going?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking. The next question, please.
I'll be back.
It's difficult to define how people will get acquainted with those tools and where and how they will use it. Maybe it will be in a totally irrational way. Maybe all these tendency to regulation will somehow limit a little bit the use of these tools. I went to a conference about that, and I wrote an article about that. And I said, for me, the problem today, if you want to limit IA, is not by technology. It's exactly like Al Capone, who was indicted for tax fraud and not for his murders. The problem with IA today is that it's unfair competition because they put on the market something which is free without seeing what is really the business model and when this free product will become a paying product and how and what is its payback. Okay. And the second aspect, which is a problem, I saw that there is a question about intellectual property, is that today it's a parasite. It is using the information produced by others without paying for it. So if you need to put that product on the market with the real market cost, paying the product, paying the people, paying the investment, paying the marketing, it shouldn't be free. So I feel when I discuss with the people in the government that they have a tendency to say, okay, if we cannot limit it ethically or philosophically or technologically, because nobody really knows what happens in that black box, okay, why don't we limit it economically? So today we can say it is very interesting, you can use it, you can do a lot of things with them. Tomorrow, if suddenly the regulators impose the real price for the service, and it is not $100 per month, okay? I think that it might totally change the scope and the background.
That's great. For me, Matt, I'm seeing foundations and universities think about personalization and customizing communications to their donors and their members and really various stakeholders, right? With what they want to get out. So for this audience, thinking about community members that you have and think of all the touch points they have with your organization in the future, I could see almost everything being personalized for them. That means, you know, their name is worked into things, the level at which they're participating in, you know, with your membership is worked into communication. So, you know, person A may see different content than person B, and you shouldn't have to spend all this manual time creating that. I'm starting to see that already with these university and foundations that I'm working with. So that the automation can make it so that, you know, they feel those communication touch points are created just for them, and they are, but you don't have to necessarily be manually doing it. So I think that's the future of this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think you make a great point with that, Josh. I'm gonna refrain from making any predictions just because there is something that happened here in the US that really really shifted my way of thinking in terms of predictions now with, you know, them disclosing UFOs and things like that. So I'm going to refrain from making a claim just because the world seems to be getting crazier by the minute. But what I would say, though, and maybe to the benefit of a lot of member organizations, that the adoption of AI within that sphere is a little bit slower. And again, that could be to their benefit. So what I would say is just realign yourself with the mission of your organization and really try to kind of remove some of the fogginess of your vision and where you really want to take it. Because based on that, that can really start helping guide your decision making in terms of where do you want to go as an organization and what are the tools that are going to help you get there, right? As Josh mentioned, like it could be personalization and you could open the path to understanding that personalization is a key component of engagement, and engagement is a key component of building a community. Or it could just be, you know, starting out in a slower process of being able to facilitate some of your daily tasks, right? By including ChatGPT into some of your daily activities and helping you create content, for example. It could be something that's simple. But what I would say is, again, just align your utility of technology and your adoption of technology with the mission that you're trying to achieve as an organization and with the vision that you have as a leader or as a member of where this organization is going to go.
And if I can do can make a prediction, which is really for membership-based organizations, I saw that my friend Ian Talbot from Chambers Ireland asked a question which is related to that, that for member-based organizations, the first thing in the very near future is to answer the questions of their member companies who are mostly asking themselves, what do I do with that AI in order to improve my business? How can I use it? So we are back to what we have done 25 years, when in the 1994, 95, running awareness seminars on internet, on e-commerce, on e-business, raising awareness, helping companies to acquire the necessary reflexes to see how to use AI in their own company to improve their business. And from there, well, membership-based companies will learn also about what to do and very pragmatically go. And again, I think mainly marketing to improve their relationship with their customers, to make it more individualized, in order to better segment their customers and members, and also to increase fidelity of their members, obviously.
So what I'm hearing is short term, I think that AI is really focusing on streamlining and making it ease of use for the end user and simpler processes for the admins and the companies using it. I think we're a long way from the Terminators and the other issues that people are worrying about. I think we're pretty much going to have AI developing and simplifying and streamlining systems to do what we want to do, but just do it in a much simpler and faster way. All right, let's get to some of these questions. And I know that we have covered some of them. I see Samson from Rwanda has asked, can you advise how the regulatory environment needs to catch up with the progress in this area, as well as the IP rights on the developed content? I think we did cover some of that. George, you were chatting about it just now as well.
Yeah, I think we covered that. For the time being, regulatory governments, agencies, they don't really know how to handle it. Okay, so mostly they think about tell us what is in the algorithm, make it clear in order to see how it works. Then there are some negotiations between some of these providers and the press, the media, in order to see how to pay for for not being a parasite, as I said, and for using the data. So I think that on one hand, it will be monetary, and on the other hand, it will be technology in order to avoid fake images, fake texts, and mainly the fake images, because this is what is really very, very
All the video
in this. Yeah,
video.
it is. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Hmm.
It's in this period where you have all these people who have terrible theories, like Raphael just said, with conspiracy theories and all that. It is clear that if you come with some kind of fake images or audio or videos, it can be a real problem. And we are there. If you have seen the latest Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, he is young in it, or he isn't, in fact, and it's bluffing.
No, absolutely. It is a concern, though. I mean, if you look at, and going back to my previous industry, which is the photographic industry, where people are now able to, I mean, people would get paid a fortune to go and build up this campaign image for a client. Now you can just type in, okay, I want to see a dog doing this in front of this background.
Yeah.
And there we go, there's the image created. And that image isn't just being created by the computer. That image is now going and referencing other artists. So it's actually stealing other artists' work, putting it together in a way for you as an artist, and creating an artwork that looks like that. You can go and say, create me a picture that is in Picasso's style, and has this. And it's going to basically, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the image and one of Picasso's paintings, but now it's yours because you asked AI to create it for you. Picasso is not getting any credit for that style or that artwork that he's created, which has basically fed that information into AI. So it is a concern, and I don't know how they're going to regulate it or what can really be done about that. But at the moment, as far as I understand, content that's created via AI, you can use. It's yours, as long as you've licensed it and it's your unique IP. Leandra asked, for small businesses just starting to use AI in their businesses, where would be a good starting point in navigating all the tools available?
That's a really good question.
Leandra, I think I'll send you an article I saw the other day. It's got like the top 100 most used, and it's kind of segmented into industry, because there are literally tens of thousands of systems out there. But I think there are the primary case uses. I'll send that article. I'll actually share it afterwards to you.
Yeah, and a point to that as well is I would ask myself, what do I need it for? Because there are so many tools out there, right? So what do you need it for? And like Matt said, there's a lot of research that you can do online to see what tools would solve the problems that you're trying to resolve. And then also, I mean, there's a lot of great content on the internet, a lot of content creators that are giving you really honest reviews about some of these platforms. And that's a really great place to start as well, because you do get a perspective of a human talking about a particular AI tool. And again, you'd be surprised what you find. Like there's AI tools now that you would give it a link to a YouTube video, for example, and it would chop it up into 15 small pieces, all of them with unique captions and emojis, and it does it all entirely for you. So again, I would just ask myself, what do I need it for? And then just do some research, and YouTube is a great place to also find tools that will meet your needs.
I think that answers the next question as well from Anonymous. What training courses are available for using AI in membership organizations? Raf, do you know of anything available?
Right
I know
now,
that LinkedIn has actually got some great resources.
They do,
but not specific to membership organizations.
Correct. So one of the gaps in terms of content that we've noticed is that there's very little as it pertains to the use of AI specifically in member-based organizations. So what I would suggest is maybe just keep posted on our blog as we are creating this type of content as we speak, as you know, in the use of AI specifically for member-based organizations. There's not a lot out there again, but like I said, you know, a Google search might give you a result. We just haven't seen very much in the past few weeks.
I think I will design one.
Thanks, everybody. I think that's all the questions, unless I've missed anything. Let me just check the chat as well. No, I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
I think it's a topic that we could literally sit here talking all day. There is so much scope to AI, and it's because it's not doing anything new, really. It's doing what we've always done, but just doing it better, and creating new ways of doing it. So it's very relatable. I find it's in terms of tech, and I think that's where Giorgio mentioning Meta earlier. Meta has been kind of siloed, and very few people are into VR, and it's not something that everybody uses in their day-to-day kind of environment. Whereas AI is something that is in our dishwashers. It's in our absolutely everything that we use on a day-to-day basis has got AI built in. If it's learning from you and understanding and making decisions based on information you're giving it, it's essentially AI. This is just taking it, Chat GPT and that sort of thing is taking it to the next level where it's really using a much broader resource than only the information you're giving it, but it's also using the information on the internet to now make these decisions and provide you content. But I think it's a very interesting path, and we're going to see a lot of development over the next period. And I think we should have another one of these sessions in a year's time, and catch up and actually see what's happened in that year, because I think it's going to be a completely different landscape. But yeah, it's been a really good morning, well, afternoon for some of us, and I think we can end it there.
Okay, good.
Yeah, thank you all for the great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
Was
much.
interesting. Bye.
If there's anybody out there that didn't ask questions and they want to reach out to us, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're kind of all over the place, and we'll share the speaker bios and details on our LinkedIn page as well. If you just go onto LinkedIn and search GlueUp. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you and getting your feedback too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care, bye.
Bye.